Today, we're going to dig into the anatomy of a monster, Hurricane Melissa. This wasn't just some storm on the weather map. No, this was an absolute force of nature that just tore through the Caribbean. It left behind a trail of devastation, and it forced a massive global response. But before we get into the numbers and the maps, let's start with a human voice. These are the words of Jack Edma, who was right there in Jamaica when it hit. And his words, they just capture that raw, personal fear that statistics, they just can't. It's such a powerful reminder that behind every data point, there's a person just trying to find a safe place to hide. And this is the force we're talking about. Category 5, the absolute highest rating you can get on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. We're not just talking about a strong storm. This is the most powerful classification that exists, period. So how did a monster like this even move? It didn't just hit one spot and fizzle out. Oh no. It carved a destructive path across several nations. Let's trace that journey together. Okay, try to wrap your head around this. When Melissa made landfall in Jamaica, the winds hit a staggering 185 miles per hour. One retiree on the island actually said it sounded like a roaring lion. I mean, that's a speed that doesn't just knock things over, it literally tears them apart. And this timeline just shows the storm's relentless, non-stop assault. First, it slams into Jamaica as that catastrophic Cat 5. Then, even after weakening a bit, it still pummels Cuba as a major Category 3. And it's still not done. It then barrels right on through the Bahamas. Every single stop on this path was a new wave of absolute devastation. The path of the storm, that tells one story, right? A story of movement and intensity. But the aftermath on the ground, well, that tells a whole other story, a far more tragic one, measured in lives lost and communities that were just shattered. This was just the initial reported death toll across Haiti, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic. More than 30 people lost their lives. And honestly, with communications down everywhere and so many people still missing, authorities were terrified that this number was only going to go up. The thing is, the devastation wasn't just one problem. It was this cascading failure of all the essential services we rely on. You see the individual impacts here, right? Power grids just crippled, homes completely flooded, communication totally lost. Put it all together, and you have a systemic collapse that basically paralyzed the entire region. And right in the face of all that chaos, you had leaders like Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness trying to rally their people. This quote really shows it all. He's acknowledging the immense scale of the damage while trying to pivot everyone toward the monumental task of recovery. And here's a number that truly puts that task into perspective. This is AccuWeather's preliminary damage estimate, just for Jamaica alone. $22 billion. Let that sink in. That figure isn't just about broken buildings. It's a shattered economy and a very, very long road back. So with destruction this widespread, you have to ask, how can aid possibly be effective? I mean, it's an overwhelming question, right? But one organization's approach in Cuba shows the incredible power of having a very specific, targeted focus. This is the fundamental question. It's what every aid organization has to grapple with. Do you try to fix everything at once and spread yourself thin? Or do you find one critical point of failure and attack it with everything you've got? Well, one group, the Pan American Medical Aid Coalition, had a very specific answer. Instead of trying to boil the ocean, PAMA honed in on a single, urgent request that came directly from Cuban medical authorities on the ground. They basically decided, look, we're going to do one thing and we're going to do it well. And their strategy was just brilliant in its simplicity. Step 1, they listened. They didn't assume. Cuban hospitals were desperate for painkillers for trauma patients. So step 2, they acted. They launched a super targeted campaign to fund and ship exactly that. And then step 3, deliver it through trusted channels to make sure it got right where it was needed most. Simple, effective. And they set this clear, tangible fundraising goal, $20,000. It wasn't some vague appeal for help. It was a specific target for a specific life-saving need. That kind of clarity in a crisis, it's incredibly effective. For PAMA's lead, Dr. Oriol Ramirez, this mission was about so much more than just logistics. It was a whole philosophy, providing aid that respects people's dignity, that relies on coordination, and that shows true solidarity. It's a really powerful model for effective aid in any disaster, anywhere. Now, PAMA's focused effort was amazing,
But it was just one piece of a much larger, much more complex puzzle. As the true scale of the disaster became clear, the world began to react, and help started coming from all corners.
And the response was incredibly diverse. You had the US government sending in rescue teams, the Pope offering prayers, and the private sector stepping up, like Elon Musk providing crucial internet access with Starlink. And we have to talk about the Bahamas, which took proactive measures, executing this massive evacuation before the storm hit, which, there's no doubt, saved countless lives.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Because beyond the immediate recovery, Hurricane Melissa forces us to confront a bigger and honestly more troubling trend. This wasn't just some freak storm, it's part of a really disturbing pattern.
And to understand that pattern, we need to talk about this thing called ACE, or accumulated cyclone energy. The easiest way to think about it is like a power rating for an entire hurricane season. It combines how strong the storms are and how long they last to give us one number that tells us just how active the season was. And this chart, this is why ACE matters. The 2025 season, fueled by Melissa's intensity, is now officially above normal. And as you can see, it joins 9 of the last 10 Atlantic seasons in that same category. 9 out of 10. This isn't an anomaly anymore, folks. It's the new normal. Which leaves us with this critical, forward-looking question. If monster storms like Melissa are no longer the exception but are becoming the rule, then what has to change? It's not enough to just get better at cleaning up afterward. We have to fundamentally rethink everything, from how we deliver aid to how we build our communities to be resilient in the first place.